Hello, hello, welcome to the show. Welcome to Not Just Nintendo, a video game podcast about Nintendo. But it's not just Nintendo here at Not Just Nintendo, because we talk about other video games as well. And by we, I mean just me, because I am solo on this endeavor. Welcome back to the show, everybody. This is the show for April 23rd, which means we're almost done with April. The last show will be on the 30th, right? I think that's correct. So it'll be the last day. It's quarter two, right? It's quarter two of the year, right? Quarter two of the year. And quarter two of the year means we're getting all sorts of announcements, all sorts of news and stuff. It's really starting to pick up. A lot of rumors, a lot of speculation. And this is like besides Switch 2. There's news and rumors about other companies and stuff. And so we're definitely going to touch on that a little bit today. But I also, I've been playing a few different games. I beat 2 different games. I'm going to talk about those. They're very similar games, though. And then I'll also talk about a bunch of news and some other things that I've been playing a little bit. There's actually quite a lot to talk about today. I think today is probably going to be a longer episode, which is nice because I've been kind of like running out of things. I originally planned for this show to always be an hour and a half, but I haven't had a single episode. Actually, that's not true. I had 2 episodes that hit an hour and a half. I haven't had an episode hit an hour and a half in over a month, so it's not something. It doesn't seem to usually work out at an hour and a half. It seems to usually work out at more like an hour 15. I think they've been getting a little bit shorter recently as well. So I'd like to pick that up and make them longer length again. I guess episode 3 there was an hour 45 almost, so that wasn't too bad. But yeah, they've been pretty short. I think this one will probably be an hour and a half, maybe even a little more. We'll see. I'm not going to speculate too early, although that's exactly what I'm doing, so maybe I am going to speculate too early. But anyways, thanks for everyone for tuning in. Today, of course, is a very special episode, because like I said, there's lots to talk about, but really it's special because it is episode 10. Episode 10. So that means, honestly, I would say episode 10, that's the point where we're going, right? Like, we're fully into, maybe not fully into it, but like we're rolling, Like the first few episodes, I really didn't know what I was doing. I still really don't know what I'm doing, but at least now I'm kind of in the groove of doing this every week. I think I've been pretty consistent. I did have the one episode there, episode 7 came out a couple days late. It was supposed to come out 1 day late. It came out 2 days late. I don't think it's terrible. You knew it was going to be late anyways, so I don't think it's a huge deal. Obviously, probably should have got it out on time, but, again, it's not the end of the world. I think it's okay. So that's, it is what it is. I know every episode I'm like, I'm going to start posting videos again, and then I don't. I actually do think I'm going to have a video out, like a regular video out before the next podcast episode. I'm actually pretty sure. Maybe even 2. So we'll see. Maybe I shouldn't even say that because I can't promise anything, but I'm going to promise stuff anyways. Originally, I was going to talk about news and stuff before the games I beat, but I guess I can actually talk about the games I beat first. Although I guess first of all, I'll do a little bit of update, on my life, right, on my video game filing and stuff. I talked about over the last few episodes. I talked about last time how I had gone through a bunch of controllers. I had moved the PS3 and the Wii U. And I had, like, reset everything up. I'd unplugged everything, plugged it all back in. I talked about that ad nauseum last episode. But since then, I got rubber bands, and I've been rubber banding up the cords on the Atari controllers. So those are all done. So a lot of the things I'm starting to get better organized. I did that with the Atari controllers. I've started doing that with Genesis controllers, and I'm gonna get through all my controllers. Not all my controllers. All the ones I don't use regularly, though, I'll do. Some of them I use regularly enough that there's not any point really. So I won't do those ones because why would I do that? That's stupid. So I imagine by next episode I'll probably have all of the controllers that I'm gonna wrapped up, and then I'll probably move on to AC adapters, power cords, and then after that probably hookups like AV, HDMI, coax, RF. UHF or whatever it's called, whatever, all that stuff. I'll probably move on to that stuff, and then I might even do my USB cords. I know those aren't for video games, but they're related, right? They're technology. I have a lot of not video game tech stuffs as well. So that's kind of partially what I've been working on besides playing games and stuff. And I think I just kind of got motivated after beating Persona Persona 3. I got motivated to kind of, do a bunch of this cleanup stuff and play some old consoles and stuff again. I haven't been playing as much old stuff until the last week. So it's been nice to be back to that. And I'll be talking about some of those games that I played here pretty soon. I also talked, the last few weeks, I've been talking about my video game collection and how I was filing all of my old games and new games, all my games. And so I was going through company by company and listing all the games in a spreadsheet. I had all the games and the year they came out and whether I have them loose or complete or in between. I had the developers, the publishers, where I found them, if I remember, how much I paid for them, if I remember, and then the year I got them, and if I remember. Um, so all that information, I was tracking all that stuff, and last time I had finished all but PlayStation and Xbox. And since last time, I've finished all my PlayStation games, so now all I've got left are Xbox games. And I do have quite a few Xbox games. I think between all the consoles, I have like in the ballpark of 80. Um, so I have to file all those. That'll take a while. Maybe I won't get it done in the next week, but I'll at least start. So maybe I'll get it done though. We'll see. So I might have an estimate, or not even an estimate. I might have the exact count next week as far as how many video games I own. I'm thinking of doing the collection tour video I've been talking about. I was thinking of doing that in July. I wanted to get my room all cleaned up, and it basically is, but I have a collection of pop figures as well. I don't think most people know this. I have a collection of pop figures. I have, I don't know, probably 60 to 80 pop figures, maybe more than that. I don't know. Quite a few. I have quite a few pop figures, maybe 100. I don't know. And so they take up quite a lot of room, and they're on some of the same shelves as my video games. Well, I'm looking to box those up, put them in totes and stuff, because I haven't collected pop figures in quite a few years, and I just don't really care to have them. I mean, they get all dusty, and they fall off the shelves, and all this stuff, and I just want to tote them up and move them out of the way so I can fit more video games, because I'm running out of space for some of my video game stuff. So I'm looking to box all these pop figures up, put them somewhere in the garage or something, and then I'll have more space for video games, and I can spread things out more, I can display things better. Maybe I can, 3D print some controller stands and stuff to go and display some of those. I can display some not hooked up consoles on the shelves. There's a lot of cool stuff I can do if I can, clear off that other section of the shelf, those other sections of the shelf. So I'm going to do that here. I don't know when that's going to start, whenever I can find good totes for it. So that'll gradually happen. And so in July, hopefully by then, that'll all be done, and I'll have a bunch more space to spread games out and stuff. So that's partially why I'm putting it off, but also I'm putting it off till July because it's the summertime. I can make any finishing touches to my collection and stuff. And I'm also doing it in July because that's the 5-year channel anniversary. I think it's July 27th or something. It's towards the end of July, but I'll probably be doing stuff all throughout July to celebrate. Maybe I'll even do daily streams in July. We'll see. I don't know. I'm not going to, maybe I shouldn't promise anything yet, but I'm thinking about it. So anyways, July is going to be a big month for sure. But we'll get there when we get there. You can't go too crazy until then. Talking about things that are still a long ways out. Actually, I guess July's not that far out, is it? Wow, actually, the year is really coming along, isn't it? Feels like school's gonna be out any day now, and it's not actually. It's gonna be a little while, but it won't be too long. We can make it through. So yes, that's what I've been working on. My game collection is almost done being filed. Everything's like organized and stuff for the collection tour. It's really just gonna be about what else can I display? Can I change anything to make things look better? All that stuff. I'll be gradually looking on that for the collection tour, and also just have my collection looking nice and everything being in a good spot. So that's kind of some of my goals with the collection. Obviously, I also just want to buy more games, right? I mean, I don't know. I think I'm getting pretty close to 600. Maybe I can cross the 600 line um, before July. I don't know. Maybe not. We'll see. But even if not, I imagine I'll probably hit 600 this year, I would guess. So that'll be exciting. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff in that vein. I guess we can move on a little bit to some games that I have been playing, some games I've beaten. I've beaten 2 games, and they're both in the same vein. They're in the same series, I suppose. For Easter, at Easter time, because we had Easter in the last week. That was a thing that happened. Um, I got the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Cowabunga collection, Konami collection from 2022. I got it on Switch. I think it might be on other platforms as well. I don't know. But anyways, so I got this collection, and I knew about this collection before, but I didn't actually know what all games were on it. It's the original TMNT, the arcade game, and the NES port for that, plus Turtles in Time. There's the Genesis, the Super Nintendo, and the arcade version of Turtles in Time. There's another Turtles game that was on NES that isn't a beat 'em up at all. It's actually a little confusing. On NES, they put out three Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle games. There was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which was like a 2D action adventure platformer brawler. I don't know, something like that. A weird little thing. It was 2D side scrolling. And then they put out Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, which was the arcade game. That's what it was subtitled, and that also happens to be the same game as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on the arcade. Then they put out Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, The Manhattan Project, which was in the style of the arcade game. And then they put out on Super Nintendo, and I think it came to NES afterwards, and it came to Genesis. They put out Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4, Turtles in Time, which is the same as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time, that was in arcades. So really, stuff that didn't come to arcades was the Manhattan Project, even though it's very similar to the arcade games. And there was another Turtles game on NES that didn't come that was completely different. But most of these games were on arcades and on NES, and the arcade versions are better graphically and just, I mean, really, they're superior in every way. Um, now that they're on a collection and stuff, it's much better to play the arcade versions than the NES versions. Also on the collection, there's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters, which was a fighting game on Super Nintendo and Genesis and probably arcade, maybe NES, I don't know, a few platforms. And then there's also a couple Game Boy spin-offs as well. So there's quite a number of things on the collection. You can also see all of the game boxes and the game manuals and stuff for all of those games, which is definitely fun. Obviously I like to collect games and stuff. I do have the original cart for TMNT on NES, only the first one though. But I don't have the box and the manual and stuff. So it's kind of nice to have those digital scans of those things. Of course, I'd like to have them in box and stuff, in real life as well. But, it's definitely cool when they include those sort of things, especially with physical media probably being on the way out pretty soon here, which is unfortunate. But, at least there are still ways to read some of these manuals and things. I'm definitely someone who appreciates game manuals, and, I hear it all the time. People are like, oh man, what a shame that game manuals are gone. And I can definitely agree to some point, but at the same time, you know, it's not the end of the world. I think I can live without the game manuals. Now, without the boxes and the cartridges, that's not good. I definitely want that stuff to say. The manuals, I can get over it. I do definitely like looking at manuals and stuff, but it's whatevs, right? The manuals definitely make sense to get rid of because there's online options and stuff. I would say, even though it's sort of similar with the physical games versus digital games and stuff, it definitely seems like those, for me, I think, make a lot more sense to have. They're shelf pieces, they're for preservation reasons, all these things. I mean, have physical games makes a lot more sense. The manuals, I can understand why we might not want manuals. Personally, I'd love if the manuals were still around, but I can deal with it. So that was a little side tangent I got into there. But anyways, but my point was, it was pretty nice that the collection added all that stuff in. I was a little surprised to see that they didn't add like the music tracks, the soundtracks for the games. Usually a lot of these collections do that, but I never take advantage of that feature, so it's not really a huge deal. It's not one of those things like, here I am complaining about it the one time that it's not there, but when it is usually there, I'm like, oh, who's going to use this? It's like grass is greener on the other side kind of stuff. Um, and then also, of course, there were the games. I will say, if there's one thing I'm not impressed with the collection, because I was impressed with the collection generally, there was one thing I wasn't impressed with, and that was like the layout of the game menu. You hit games, and then it just pops up, and it's just like, side-scrolling panels. It's like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'm like, okay, which one? Are we talking about the arcade one, or the NES one, or the arcade version or the NES version of the arcade one? Like, what are we talking about here? And then there's like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time. I'm like, okay, are we talking about the Genesis one, or the Super Nintendo one, or the arcade one? Like, what are we talking about here? It's not always super clear which one because they're on different consoles and stuff, and they're not labeled with what console it's on. So you just kind of have to look at the gameplay and gauge based on that what console you're on. Which, not the end of the world, but it's a little bit strange. But yeah, overall, I've definitely enjoyed the Cowabunga collection. I think I'm probably done beating games in the Cowabunga collection. I beat the first Turtles game, the arcade one, and I beat Turtles in Time. I tried the Manhattan Project. I guess I talk about each one. So I tried the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in arcade, and of course, because it's an arcade game, back in the day, they're beat 'em ups. I mean, for those that don't know, it's a beat 'em up. It's a side-scrolling beat 'em up, kind of like a Ninja Gaiden, like a Double Dragon, like a Streets of Rage, like a River City Ransom, like all those things. Um, TMNT is just like that kind of stuff. So the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was in arcades, and it was really well known for the fact that like every life or every two lives would cost you a quarter. And so you would put in when you started the game, you would put in a couple quarters and you'd get a few lives. And then when you ran out of lives, you could put in more quarters and you could keep playing. And so thankfully now we don't live in that world. We can just play the games without having to spend quarters for every life. And so now you can just hit start on the Cowabunga collection and you can just spam it over and over again to get infinite lives. And so at the beginning of the game, I think I gave myself about 500 lives. And I was like, all right, that's enough. And sure enough, I only really needed like 20 or 30 or something. It's not that hard a game, but it was a hard game back in the day when you had to actually, use quarters and consistently, give yourself, or break yourself basically of money. So the original Turtles game, I beat that in about 45 minutes. It's very short when you have infinite lives. You don't have to worry about restarting and stuff. And I gotta say, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I personally have never been a huge fan of beat 'em ups. I've tried some beat 'em ups here and there. I tried like Ninja Gaiden. I've tried some other ones here and there. I tried some Streets of Rage. And what I find is that beat 'em ups are just too hard. I end up getting a game over, and then I don't want to restart the entire game because that's stupid. And so beat 'em ups just feel archaic, like inherently, which I mean, I guess they kind of are, right, in a way. I mean, what beat 'em up is not sort of old, like beat 'em ups just don't really exist anymore. There's been some efforts to bring them back. Obviously, the Cowabunga collection, you had Shredder's Revenge, TMNT, and you also had Streets of Rage 4. There have been some efforts to bring them back, but I would say, generally speaking, beat 'em ups are long dead. Um, and so you go back to a beat 'em up, and it usually feels quite antiquated in many different aspects. And so that's kind of my problem with beat 'em ups. I can appreciate some of them here and there, but generally they don't feel very good. I will say though, TMNT, without having to worry about life situations, is fantastic. I loved Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I said I beat it in about 45 minutes. I beat it on April 19th as well, I should say. Um, so yeah, TMNT, it's a great game. It's you have to fight enemies. Obviously, no way. Who would have thought, right? I personally picked. I think I picked Raphael for the first TMNT, though it doesn't really matter hardly at all. You can pick any turtle, and they basically all play the same. There's not really any difference, other than obviously their bandanas. There's like there's an attack that just attacks in front of you, and then there's an attack that you kind of like move a little bit forward and do a kick. And there's another attack where you can jump up and then you can kick down in like a horizontal motion, and you can knock people over that way. And so every word spamming and stuff. I tried to be a little bit methodical and tactical about how I did stuff, but I can't say I never resorted to spamming and stuff. I guess it's kind of hard to talk about beat 'em ups. Like, there's just not a whole lot to say. You're just like, okay, I walked down the street and I punched some guys and I won. There were a couple bosses, right? Like, there's not a whole lot going on really to talk about. But I will say, playing these TMNT games, this one and Turtles in Time, sorry, has really kind of awakened me. I'm like, man, I've got to go play more beat 'em ups. And so I'm probably going to end up playing Streets of Rage on Switch Online at some point. I don't know if Altered Beast counts as a beat 'em up. I would say probably not, but it's a similar idea. There's kind of beat 'em up ish ideas in there. I want to play some of these games all of a sudden. It's like crazy. Like, I never thought I was going to be in a position where I was like, oh, I want to play Streets of Rage. But all of a sudden, I'm like, yep, I want to play Streets of Rage. I want to play Double Dragon. I want to play all these games. And so I'm gonna probably be working on that. So that's gonna be an interesting rabbit hole to jump down. But yeah, I played the first Turtles. Your sky scrolling. I will say in Turtles, there's some cool moments where you have to like. There's two different levels. You can like jump up and walk along a different ledge, and you can have like elevation. There's moments where you have to walk down the street like forward, like it's not 3D, but you kind of like move in a different plane there. And some points, there's a lot of cool, interesting stuff. And the game is very graphically and conceptually, I suppose, impressive for the time. And it's always one of those things where, back then, arcades were always like way ahead of consoles. And so everything was better on arcades. You always had a better experience, with graphics and with gameplay mechanics and all this stuff. The arcades were just always superior. And nowadays, it feels like the arcades are far worse than home consoles. I'm sure that, there would be the opportunity to make them better if you so wanted to, but arcades like video arcades aren't really much of a thing anymore, and so there's not really any push for that kind of stuff. But at one point, I would say it was really at the PS1 generation where suddenly it was like, oh man, these home consoles are actually getting to be as powerful as the arcades. I would say that's about when that started. But before that, the arcades were always far more powerful. Even on like Super Nintendo and Genesis, the arcades were still more powerful. So, just kind of interesting how we saw that shift so long ago and never went back because arcades just kind of slowly pittered out. So after playing the first TMNT, after playing the game that's literally just called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I tried the other game called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which is completely different, not to be confused with the other Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I tried the NES version, not the NES version of the arcade game, but the NES version of a completely different game that's like a side-scrolling. I mean, I don't know. You could say maybe it's still a beat 'em up. I would say it's more of a action adventure platformer brawler kind of thing. It's a bit of a different idea. There's none of that stuff with the different elevation and the different planes and stuff. It is completely just a flat image. Flat. I mean, it's not an image, like it moves, but you know what I mean. There's no depth in it like there is on the arcade one, and it's a completely different game. Your combat and stuff is completely different. There's different like holes in the ground that you go fight enemies in, but you walk around on a top-down map. It's kind of like Zelda 2, which I know I'm probably not selling this game very well because I mean the game does kind of suck to be honest. But it's like Zelda 2 where you'll walk around, from a top-down perspective, and then you'll go in a little hole in the ground and you'll go fight enemies. And honestly, the game's kind of terrible. I gave up after like 20 minutes. I was like, man, this game sucks, and I never went back. And I don't intend to go back to that NES TMNT one because that game sucks. And the Game Boy games that are included in the collection seem to be of a similar ilk. So I'm not going to just necessarily judge them too hard, too fast. I definitely should still try them, and I haven't got around to that yet. So I will try those Game Boy games, but it doesn't seem like I'm going to appreciate them like at all. I'm probably going to hate them. They don't seem very good. But really, the beat 'em up ones, the arcade ones, those are good. So after I tried the first TMNT and I tried the NES one, I went and tried the Manhattan Project, which was the next arcade game. Oh, well, it's not an arcade game, but it's in the style of the arcade games. Manhattan Project, for some reason, was never in arcades, or at least I don't think it was. It wasn't listed as being in an arcade, but maybe it was actually, and I'm just missing something. But Manhattan Project was definitely a continuation of the first arcade game. Even the story is continued, but it's a lot of the same mechanics. It's a lot of the same stuff. You're in different locations and environments. Some of the combat seems more improved. Honestly, it's better in every way, except for one, and that's that in the Cowabunga collection, you can no longer give yourselves infinite lives because the game was never originally an arcade game. So instead of having the idea of like put in a quarter, get 2 lives, it was built on NES, and so it was like have 5 lives. I hope you don't game over. It's one of those games, and those games tend to suck on NES because I can't beat them in the 5 lives, and I have to play them over and over and over again because I like to think I'm pretty decent at video games, but mostly at modern, or not necessarily modern, but more modern than NES. I would say like most Super Nintendo games I can probably pick up and get through fine. I might have some problems here and there. But after that, like PlayStation 1, 64 games, those ones are usually going to be quite a breeze. But sometimes Super Nintendo can be a problem. NES games, though, you give me a random NES game, I'm probably going to have some problems. So maybe I'll still like it, and maybe I'll be able to get through it. But they can sometimes be a bit of a mess, to be honest. So that's kind of, it was one of those things, right? Manhattan Project, it seemed like a really solid game. The problem is I got a few levels in and then I game over it and I'm like, well, I'm not going to just keep playing this game over and over again hoping that eventually I beat it because that's stupid. I've played too many games to play games like that because that's completely insane. I don't know why anyone would do that. Um, well, I can understand why you might do that, back in 1990 or whatever when that came out. Maybe it was 89, but whatever. But I can't understand why you would do that nowadays when there's other options, like you don't have to play games like that. I guess if you're nostalgic or, maybe you really enjoyed the other Turtles games or you're just really good at beat 'em ups, maybe there's a few situations. But for me, it didn't really seem like it made any sense to do that, and so I just didn't. Like, problem solved, right? Um, Anyways, after playing the first game and after bouncing off of the uh, Manhattan Project game, I went and played Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Turtles in Time, which was also Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4 back on Super Nintendo and NES. But I played the arcade version again, and man, Turtles in Time is even more of a step up. Like I talked about how the first game was a little bit graphically impressive and mechanically impressive. Turtles in Time is that on steroids. Like they improved like everything about that game. I could see why you might prefer the original if you're nostalgic or honestly, I think that's really the only reason. I think generally everything else, seems to be better with Turtles in Time than with the original. And there's nothing against the original. I think the original is still a great game. But if you're going to play both, you probably should play, the first one first and then the second one, Turtles in Time second because there's just such an improvement that I think going from Turtles in Time to the original game might not feel quite so good. I mean, you would probably be okay, but I think if you're gonna play it both, you're better off just playing the first one first and Turtles in Time second. Is my opinion. But I played Turtles in Time. I beat that on April 20th, so the day after the first one. And again, I played it in about an hour. It took a little longer, but not much. Because again, you have save states, you have infinite lives. I think that time I only gave myself 100 lives, and I still finished with like 20 or something. I used quite a few more in Turtles in Time. I think Turtles in Time is a little bit harder. So if you're not gonna cheat and give yourself tons of lives, then I guess maybe you'll struggle a little bit with Turtles in Time. Um, but I don't know. I thought about it. I was like, if you wanted to play this game authentically, you could like make a jar, and like every life you die, you have to put in a quarter. You know. Although with like inflation, maybe you'd have to put in like $1.50 or something. You go broke like real fast. But anyways, so TMNT Turtles in Time also great. I think for that one I played as Michelangelo instead of Raphael. So switching it up, right? I don't know. I didn't play as anybody else in Turtles in Time, so I'm not sure if the character you pick matters at all in Turtles in Time. I know that in the original it really doesn't seem to make any difference at all. Maybe there's someone who's better than others, but it seems like generally it's not much of a thing. So I would say just don't even worry about it. Just play whoever you want. Play your favorite color. Your favorite color turtle. Do whatever. It doesn't really matter. But yes, those are solid games. I would definitely recommend the Cowabunga collection. I don't know if it's cheap everywhere. I know it was cheap at my Walmart. Um, it might be on sale or something. Well, actually, it looks like even Nintendo's selling it for only $16. So yeah, it looks like it's super cheap. If you're someone who buys stuff digitally, go do that. Otherwise, you can probably still find it pretty cheap on well, apparently not on PS5 because apparently on PS5 is $120, so it must be pretty rare on there. But on Switch, it's super cheap. So, um, that's crazy. Why is it so expensive on Amazon? I have no idea. Anyways, don't buy it on Amazon. Okay, problem solved. But yes, otherwise it seems to be fairly cheap. I would definitely recommend the Cowabunga collection. Even if you're someone who maybe doesn't like beat 'em ups, I guess if you've played a lot and you don't like beat 'em ups, then maybe don't. But if you're someone who thinks you don't like beat 'em ups like I did, try Turtles in Time and try the original, and it'll probably get you into beat 'em ups because turns out beat 'em ups can be pretty good. Just depends on the beat 'em up, you know. Especially when they have modern features and stuff. So this definitely makes me want to retry Shredder's Revenge. I did try Shredder's Revenge when I had Game Pass back in, I want to say November is when I tried it. I tried it for just a little bit. I was like, yeah, it's all right, and then I kind of stopped. But it makes me want to go back and give it another fair chance because now that I've played the other two, I think I would appreciate the game perhaps a little more. Alright, so that's all the games that I actually beat over the last week. But I've been playing some other stuff. I figured I should talk about it here a little bit. I have been back on. I've played a little bit on the original PS1. The original PS1. I played on the original PlayStation. I played some Gran Turismo, the first one, Gran Turismo 1. Um, I have, I think, every main series Gran Turismo game. I just got Gran Turismo 7 at Easter. I got the Cowabunga Collection and I got Gran Turismo 7. I haven't tried Gran Turismo 7 yet. The only Gran Turismo games I've actually personally played, I played quite a bit of 2. I've now played quite a bit of 1. And I played a little bit of my first Gran Turismo on PS5. I haven't played the ones in between, but I do own them. So I have Gran Turismo 1, Gran Turismo 2, Gran Turismo 3, Project A-Spec. I don't have the original release of Gran Turismo 3. I have the later edition of it with more stuff. So I have the best version. I guess I should probably get the original version as well at some point. I have Gran Turismo 4. I have Gran Turismo 5 and 5 Prologue, which again is like a little side piece for Gran Turismo 5. I have Gran Turismo 6 and I have Gran Turismo 7. So I have all of the mainline Gran Turismo games, and I have a re-release of 5. Um, so I have the full series, like the main series, but there's other spin-offs. There's a port of the first Gran Turismo to PSP. There's, like I said, there's another version of Gran Turismo 3. I mean, I have the greatest hits version of Gran Turismo 1 and 2, so I guess I could go and get the original versions. I mean, there's a lot, if I was really trying to be technically complete, I could do, but, I'm not too worried about some of those things. I have the whole main series, so as far as I'm concerned, I have the full thing. Um, that's kind of really what I was concerned about. So I'm happy to have the full Gran Turismo collection, and I've been playing Gran Turismo 1, and something interesting with Gran Turismo 1, and of course, I'm coming at this perspective of only having played my first Gran Turismo, which isn't like, it's just a little tech demo, basically, for Gran Turismo 7. Played a little bit of that, and I'm coming at this from the angle of having played Gran Turismo 2, and I've watched my dad play Gran Turismo 3 a little bit. I had never played any of the other ones. So I'm coming at this from this perspective. And Gran Turismo 1, I found it really weird how when I started playing the game, obviously you have to go find a car that's cheap enough because you only start out with a little bit of money. You usually got to buy a used car, and that's what I did. I found it weird, though, that I couldn't go do a race until I got a license. Like, you didn't start out with a license good enough to do any races. You actually have to go get a license before you do any races. Because I know in Gran Turismo 2 and in 3, you can do, like, the first race, or sometimes all of the races of the Clubman Cup. Not Clubman, sorry, the Sunday Cup. The Clubman Cup's the second one. Before you even have a license. So, I found it really weird. But you had to actually go get the first license before you did any races. So I did that. I got the first license. I went and I raced a little bit. I bought a pretty good car. I got a 4-wheel drive. I always try to go find a 4-wheel drive car. My dad got me in that habit. And it usually works out pretty well. I try to find the 4-wheel drive car with the highest horsepower, which happens to usually be a Mitsubishi that I can afford. And that's what I start racing with at Gran Turismo. And I imagine that'll be my strategy for every Gran Turismo I play, unless maybe the meta changes in the later ones. I don't really know. But it seems like that's the way to go, at least in the original few Gran Turismos, is to buy a cheap 4-wheel drive car, usually for Mitsubishi, and then upgrade that a little bit, and eventually get a new 4-wheel drive car, and basically stick to 4-wheel drive cars unless you're doing the special challenges and stuff. So yeah, I played quite a bit of Gran Turismo 1. I think I played like a few hours, and I got to where I had pretty quickly, honestly, won the first Sunday Cup. And I went and looked, and I couldn't do like anything else. The only other thing I could try was the 4-wheel drive special event, which I didn't have a good enough car to do. I mean, I could do it, but I would get 5th or 6th place. And so I couldn't do that one. I went to get the second license. There's only 3 in Gran Turismo 1, and I was like struggling like crazy. I actually spent like a full 2 hours working on just 2 different out of 10, 2 different challenges in the second license in Gran Turismo 1. So I got super stuck. I don't know if I'm going to come back to it or not. It's been a couple days. We'll see. Maybe I'll go back to Gran Turismo 1. I am kind of thinking of playing them all, but I don't know. I mean, there's like 7 games. They're all pretty long to beat. is there really much point? I don't know. Maybe I'll bounce around a little bit. Maybe I'll play through Gran Turismo 1, maybe I won't. And then I'll go play 7, just because it's the new thing. And then I'll go back to some of the old ones. We'll see. I know my dad's also playing them. He hasn't played in a while, but he played Gran Turismo 2. I think he did basically everything in Gran Turismo 2. Um Maybe he did everything, I don't know. And then now he was playing 3, but he hasn't played it a little while, so I don't know. So, anyways, Gran Turismo, he was a big fan of that. He kind of got me into that. I'm a big fan of Gran Turismo as well. Of course, the analogous thing to Gran Turismo, I mean, you could say like Need for Speed has some similar things, Bird Out has some similar things, but really the closest thing is Forza. Specifically, probably Forza Motorsport, I would say, is the closest thing. I played Forza Motorsport, oh god, 5? 4? Hold on, I'm gonna go check, because I'm gonna forget. 3. It's Forza Motorsport 3. I've played a bit of that on 360. I played a little bit of Forza Motorsport 3, and I've got to say, Forza Motorsport 3 is really cool, especially having played only the first 2 Gran Turismos. It's pretty cool looking at something that looks more visually impressive, obviously, right? My problem with Forza Motorsport, and I haven't tried Forza Horizon. I do intend to try Forza Horizon, but I haven't yet. My problem with Forza Motorsport is that it seems like there's like literally nothing to do because you sign up for a race like every week. You sign up for you sign up for like a cup of races, a series of races, I guess is what it's called. Um, Whereas like in Gran Turismo, there's like there's a list where you can see all the different cups that you have to do, and you've got to try to get first at all of them. You don't have to, but that's if you're looking to complete it, you got to get first at all of them. Whereas in Forza, you just kind of aimlessly pick a cup, a series, and then the next week you just pick another one. Sometimes you can do the same one, other times it's a different one, but there's no list anywhere, there's no, like, stop, like, there's no end goal, like, I've got to beat all these series, like, there's nothing like that. You just kind of keep going. You just have fun, I guess. I don't know. Maybe there's, like, you try to get the best car, maybe there's some goals you can set for yourself, but generally, there's no, like, defined goal, like, this is what you're supposed to do. Whereas the Gran Turismo, you're obviously just supposed to finish all the cups, right? Like that's the goal. Maybe you want to get all the cars, and you can do that, whatever. But really, the goal is to win in all the cups. So I definitely preferred Gran Turismo for that because it seemed like there was the clear objective, and I usually need a clear objective in games. That's why I don't really like a whole lot of multiplayer games, a whole lot of online stuff. I play it a little bit here and there, but every now and then. Generally, I'm playing single player stuff with a clear objective. So, and that's kind of my problem with Forza Motorsport. It didn't seem like there was a clear objective, and that's Motorsport 3. Maybe the more recent ones do have more of a clear objective. I don't know. I guess I could look into it. Maybe what are they on like? Well, they did a reboot of Forza Motorsport. I don't know, but I definitely should try Forza Horizon at least once. I know Forza Horizon 5 maybe is what they're on, I think. That's coming to PlayStation like pretty soon, I thought. It's definitely this year. I can't remember exactly when. So I'm thinking of playing it there. Or if it comes to Switch 2, maybe I'll try it there instead. I don't know. I'm definitely thinking of playing Forza Horizon not on Xbox. Because I just don't like Xbox and I try to find any reason not to play Xbox games on Xbox. And so and thankfully they give me a lot of ways to play Xbox games not on Xbox because they can't sell any consoles, so they've got to put their games somewhere. But anyways, so Forza Motorsport, I'm not as big a fan of as Gran Turismo and Horizon. I've got to try, but yeah, I definitely now that I have Gran Turismo 7, especially, I'm definitely excited to get to try that. Maybe I'll go back to my first Gran Turismo as well because that was a short little thing. I can beat that and have it as a game. We'll see. But yeah, I'm definitely considering beating a lot of the games. I might go back to the first one. I might not. It's a little hard, so I don't know. We'll see. Maybe if I feel like it. Another thing that I've been playing a little bit of Mario Kart 64. I don't know if I've talked about that before. I guess I should bring it up though. I am done with all of the 50cc. I've gotten the gold trophy on the 50cc courses. I haven't yet on the 100 or the 150cc. I'm probably not going to do mirror mode because I count that as like a 100% thing. So beating it for me is just doing all the CCs, except for on Super Mario Kart where they gave you credits after 100. So I was like, okay, that sounds good. On Super Circuit, you get credits after every CC. So I did all of them on Super Circuit, and on Super Mario Kart I just did 50 and 100 because you get credits after 100. We'll see how it works on 64. Maybe I'll do 50, 100, and 150. Maybe I'll just do 50 and 100. We'll see. Um, I think I just said we'll see like 100 times in a minute, but we'll see, right? So, I've been playing a little bit of Mario Kart 64. I don't really have a ton to say about that, in all honesty. It's just, I don't know, not a whole lot to say. And then the biggest thing that I've been playing over the last few days, I would say, is Infamous. I bought Infamous on PS3 like a few months ago, I thought. A few months ago. Yeah, it was like it was right at the start of the year. It might have even been in January. So it was a few months ago. I bought Infamous One, and I also bought Infamous Two just a few weeks later, having not even tried the first one, so I didn't know if I was gonna like it. And of course, for Infamous, the main series games, there's only three of them. There's Infamous Two, and then there's Infamous Second Son on PS4. So that's it. And then after that, Sucker Punch went and made Ghost of Tsushima and stuff, and that's what they've been doing for the last, 10 years almost 10 years. We're going on 10 years. So Infamous is definitely a dead series, but having played a little bit of it, I can't understand why. Because, oh my gosh, Infamous 1 is fantastic. Absolutely love Infamous on PS3. I'm having a great time with it. It's one of those things. I tried Uncharted on PS3, and Uncharted, I don't know. The PS games on PS3 just don't do it for me. Like for PlayStation, for Nintendo, I have respect for all generations of Nintendo games. Even some of the NES stuff's pretty good, right? And Nintendo games, I can respect Nintendo games from the NES all the way through the Switch. I think there's good games on every console. Maybe some consoles are better than others, but generally speaking, I don't think there's like there's like a period of Nintendo that was really all that bad. Some people like to point out the Wii U, but I think there's still a lot of good games that came out on Wii U. And of course, at the same time, there were good games on 3DS as well. That said, you look on the other side of the aisle and you've got PlayStation over here, and there definitely was an age where PlayStation games were kind of bad. And maybe that's controversial. It definitely is controversial. But I look at a lot of games on PS2, and I have a disdain for the PS2. I really don't like the PS2. And the PS3, there were a lot of like well made, like well designed games coming out, but a lot of those games were broken. And so like I played a little bit of the first Uncharted on PS3, and I was like glitching through the floor. It was crashing. I mean, it was insane. I was like, what is happening? This game is so broken. Like their characters would freeze in the cutscenes. I was like, oh my god, this is a mess. And that's what I find in a lot of games from the PS3, Xbox 360 generation. Thankfully, a lot of those games were good enough that they got remastered, and they actually finished the game the time that they remastered it. But I wish the games would have been finished from the get go. And so that was my problem with a lot of PS3 games is that, first of all, you don't actually have to play a lot of games on PS3 because a lot of them have been ported. But also, the ones that are stuck on PS3 are usually so broken that you don't want to play them. And so I played Uncharted on PS3, a little bit of it. I didn't like it. Infamous, though, doesn't seem quite as broken. And I'm not saying it's not broken, because I did have a couple moments. I fell through the floor once or twice. You just gotta kind of expect it on 7th generation non Nintendo consoles. I fell through the floor a couple times. I glitched out a couple times. It crashed once, went black screen once. There's been a few issues, but generally it hasn't been quite as bad as Uncharted was. Um, and it feels really fun to play. Like you're an Infamous. You are a superhuman being. I was gonna say a superhero, but one of the cool things about not super about Infamous is that you can pick your path. You can pick to be a supervillain, you can pick to be a superhero. And I guess in the first Infamous game, it doesn't have a huge impact on the story. It has like minor things. But I guess in the later games, it can actually have quite the impact. So personally, I've been doing the good guy route. I'm just such a good man. I'm such a good guy. Um, but anyways, so I've been doing being a hero. But I'm thinking that maybe if one of these days I replay the game, maybe I'll play as the villain my second playthrough. We'll see. I don't know. But there's a lot of, there's collectibles in the world. There's a map. You're in the Neon in Empire City, is where you are. And you have these electrical powers. And the electrical powers are cool. Um, and they're fun. And you can get XP from doing different things, doing different missions, and you can upgrade your powers and you can upgrade your abilities. You can get new powers and get new abilities as you go through the game, and you have to fight these like. Uh, I don't know, like this gang basically, with guns, and some of them use magic, and it's kind of weird. You know, it's a strange game for sure, but it's definitely fun. You have some other characters in the game that are really funny and really, entertaining, and I think they add a lot. The story is very intriguing and Infamous. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff about Infamous. There's these little blast shards, they're called, hidden around the world. You have to collect them. Well, you don't have to collect them. You have to collect a few, but you don't have to collect too many if you don't want to. But I like to. They're fun to collect. And you just kind of walk into them and you claim them. And once you get so many, you can upgrade your charge. You have like a certain amount of charge that you have to use your electrical abilities. And when you run out of charge, then you've depleted your abilities. You have to go recharge at any electrical device. So you can recharge using a car. You could recharge using a transformer. You can recharge using a light pole. A street light. But depending on what you're recharging with, you might only get X amount of energy. So a car gives you a little bit less than a street light, which maybe doesn't seem right, but I don't know. It doesn't matter. Um, so you basically go around, you recharge, and so you'll be in combat. And when you recharge, you also regain health. So you'll be in combat, and you'll be like getting beat up, and then you can go run away, and you can go recharge and come back. And of course, the enemies will follow you. So sometimes sometimes you're screwed either way. But it definitely seems like you can usually save yourself in situations in combat. And that doesn't make it like low stakes. I still think there's a lot of, like pressure and stuff. So it's definitely still fun, but there is an opportunity to save yourself if you're struggling in the combat, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate the story, and I appreciate that it's a little bit less broken than Uncharted, and yeah, it's a great game, man, like fantastic game, and it makes me want to play the other Infamous games, which I do have the second one, so I can do that. I don't have the little expansion that came out, not expansion, like a side game that came out with Infamous 2. If I wanted to play that, I would probably have to do it on the Infamous collection. So I might have to go buy the collection at some point just to play that side content. There was also a Flash game, I heard. I don't know if that's still up anywhere. Maybe I'll try that out. We'll see. And then there's also a side expansion for Infamous Second Son on PS4. I don't know if you can still play that or not either, but I'll look into it because I will probably end up playing all three of these games at some point. So, well, Infamous 2 probably pretty soon. I'll probably finish Infamous 1, and then I'll probably maybe not hop right into, but I'll definitely get to Infamous 2 fairly quickly, I would assume, because it's just such a good game. I mean, it's fantastic. So yeah, that was definitely Infamous has been quite the fun adventure. I'm still working on. I'm only like 5.5 hours in. Yeah, 5.5 hours in. So I've still got a long ways to go, and I'm doing a lot of extra stuff. It's one of those open world games, but it's a pretty small open world, which can be pretty welcoming. You play all these games with these huge open worlds, and there's nothing to do, and then you get to another game where it's a small open world, and there's the stuff is all packed together, and that's can be quite refreshing. I guess is the word I was looking for. So I definitely appreciate that stuff. Of course, it's also because of hardware limitations, but I think it also can be welcoming and inviting at the same time as being, you can understand why it happened, but you can be happy that it did happen, right? That's kind of the opinion I have with Infamous and its open world. Another thing with Infamous is you start on the map. I think there's going to be 3 sections you go to. I'm still in the first section, but I think I'm almost done. Like, I think I'm at the point where pretty soon I'm going to go to the middle section, and then I'll go to the last section. I think is what's going to happen. I don't know. I haven't played the game before, but I'm still in the first section. I think I'm almost done, though. And basically, at least in the first section, it's controlled by this gang, and you'll find these enemies, and they can randomly spawn anywhere in this area in the map. And the map is broken up into pretty small chunks, so there'll be like only a street block or two. And you do a side quest in the street block, and then all of a sudden, that area of the city is now the enemies can no longer spawn there. And so that's kind of one of the things you have to do. You don't actually have to, but you can if you want to make your life easier and if you want to, do more content, you can go around, you can do a side quest, and you can stop enemies from spawning in a specific area of the city. So that's what I've been doing, and of course it fills in parts of the map. So of course, I'm someone who enjoys filling in parts of the map in open world games. In Spider-Man, I immediately went around as soon as I could and finished all the towers before I did anything else. It's just how I am. In Assassin's Creed, right? In the first game, you have to go to those three cities. You have to, go on the towers and scan the city. And I did that immediately because I just love filling in maps in open worlds. It's something that I definitely enjoy doing. And this, there's no exception here than Infamous. I definitely want to fill out the map. And so I imagine this game will take me much longer than how long to beat says for beating it. Maybe I'll take the time of completion. Maybe I'll take even more than that. I don't know. I imagine this game could take me a little while because I'm doing a lot of extra stuff. And that's totally fine because I'm enjoying every moment of it. Infamous is a fantastic game. And I definitely am excited to get to the other Infamous games. There's two more. Before I get into some news stuff, I guess I could talk real quick. Not real quick. I'll probably yap for way too long. I went to a cool video game store. They had a lot of video games there, so I guess I could, I figured on the show I talk a lot about my game collection. I could start talking about my pickups and stuff as well, the stuff I've bought. I claimed some free stuff on Epic. I don't think I need to talk about PC stuff because that stuff's digital only. But I'll talk about physical pickups I bought and why I bought them, and I don't know. Talk a little bit if when I'm gonna play them and stuff. So I went to a video game store. It was the one I hadn't been to before. It's kind of out of the way. It was like 2 hours away. But we were going somewhere else, so we kind of just took a longer path and got there part way along the way. I bought the Uncharted collection on PS4, the Nathan Drake collection, I should say. I think there's two Uncharted collections because there's 5 games, and there was the Legacy of Thieves collection was the last 2 games. The Nathan Drake collection was the first 3. So I have Uncharted 1 on PS3, and I was talking about that earlier about how broken it is and stuff. And so I've bought the Nathan Drake collection so I can play the Uncharted games in a less broken state. Hopefully. I hope. I'm assuming. I did finally play The Last of Us Part 1. I talked about that a few weeks ago. Quite a few weeks ago, actually. I think it was like maybe the first episode of the show, second episode maybe. Somewhere in there, I talked about The Last of Us Part 1. And having played that game, I was like, suddenly had the appreciation that most people seem to for Naughty Dog. I was like, okay, Naughty Dog, they make some good stuff, right? And so now I want to go back and retry the Uncharted games, this time with a less broken version. So that's my goal here. I want to play the Uncharted games. This is the first 3, the ones that were on PS3. And then the other Legacy of Thieves collection. I don't know if I'll buy the collection or if I'll just buy the 2 games separately. We'll see. And those games were on PS4. And then Uncharted died because, I don't know, they were making The Last of Us, I guess. So there's only the 5 games. So I have the first 3 now on this collection. I'm probably going to play that like sooner rather than later, but we'll see. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff. I'm like, I have a list of like, I don't actually have a physical list, but in my brain, I've got like 50 games that I want to play before Switch 2 comes out, and there's no way that's happening. So I don't know. I'm really trying to play a lot of different things, start a lot of different things, play a lot of different things at the same time, which probably I shouldn't do, but I'm going to do it anyway because that's me. So, whatevs, right? So I bought the Uncharted collection. I also bought Yooka-Laylee, The Impossible Lair. I was going to buy The Impossible Lair on Steam a while back, or maybe it was on Switch, actually. I don't know. It was on one of those 2 places because it was super cheap. It was like $2, and then I forgot to buy it. And so now I found it physically as well. I was like, ooh, physical version, right? I love physical versions. So I found a physical version. I think it was a little bit more than the $2. It was probably like 8 or 9. But still, I was like, ooh, Yooka-Laylee, The Impossible Lair. For those that don't know, Yooka-Laylee is an iguana. Well, Yuka is an iguana. Laylee is like a bird. And it's a lot like Banjo-Kazooie because the people at Rare, when Rare got bought by Microsoft, a lot of those people got cut from the team. And a lot of them went together and made another studio called Playtonic. And so that studio nowadays is responsible for basically just Yooka-Laylee. That's the only thing I think that's actually caught on from them. So they made Yooka-Laylee on Switch in 2017, I want to say. And I want to play that game. I've wanted to play that game for years, honestly. Like, ever since it came out back then, I was like, oh, I want to play that game. And I never got around to it. I probably will at some point. But they made Yooka-Laylee. And then they made and Ukulele was based off Banjo Kazooie, so it was a 3D platformer. It was very similar to Banjo Kazooie. And then they made Ukulele and the Impossible Layer, which instead is a 2D platformer that's this time based off Donkey Kong Country. Because, of course, a lot of these guys, were responsible for both the Donkey Kong Country games and the Banjo Kazooie games. So, you can kind of see the. Apparently, I haven't played them myself, but apparently you can actually see, like, the influence from Donkey Kong Country and from Banjo Kazooie in those games, which sounds great to me because personally I love Rare. A lot of Rare games are great. I love the Donkey Kong Country games. I haven't played Banjo Kazooie other than a little bit. I played a little bit of it. I want to play it. It's another one of those ones that I was planning to play before Switch 2 and I haven't got around to it. So I might at some point, but we'll see. But yeah, another one that Banjo Kazooie is another one that I got to get around to, and the original Ukulele is kind of like that. Replayly is a remaster that's supposed to be coming out. I thought it was supposed to come out either this year or next year. Like it's pretty soon. Replayly. It's a remaster of that original Ukulele game from 2017, and I think it's coming out physically, and it's supposed to come out on Switch 2. So I'm probably gonna end up buying that on Switch 2 when that comes out. Maybe not right when it comes out, but at some point, so I can play the original Ukulele 3D platformer on Switch 2, and then I can play this 2D platformer. I bought it on PS4, the Impossible Layer. So this one's like Donkey Kong Country. The other one's like Banjo Kazooie. I also bought, not on PS4 this time, I bought Steel Diver. Of course, Steel Diver was a launch title for the 3DS. I think it came out just digitally originally, and then it came out physically later. I thought I could be wrong on that. And Steel Diver was like an underwater submarine war combat thing. It was like an online game. I think you can't play it anymore because the online servers are shut down. But I bought it for only like $5, and it is an official Nintendo first-party game, and it's fairly well known, so that's why I bought it. I'm not intending to ever play it. Maybe I'll boot it up once, just to see if I can do anything with it because the servers are shut down. I don't know if you can play anything. Maybe there's some single player stuff. I don't know. I haven't looked into it, but I just thought it'd be cool to have on my shelf. It's a clean copy. It's complete. It was only $5. I was like, all right, sounds good. I also bought while I was there two NES games. I bought Gauntlet, the Tengen cartridge. Of course, for those who don't know the story behind those Tengen cartridges, they were licensed in partnership with Atari. And back on NES, you had to buy the cartridges from Nintendo, and then you could put your game on them. So the cartridges were all licensed by Nintendo. But Atari and Tengen kind of got around that by making their own black cartridges that look totally different and the label's in the wrong place. And I mean, it's a totally different cartridge. They got around it by making their own cartridges illegally, and there was a whole lawsuit that went down. And I think Tengen actually lost, and they had to stop making that. So Gauntlet is a game that it's pretty famous. It was in arcades, and then it came to NES. And there was a version later on with a gray cartridge like a regular NES cartridge. That's more expensive nowadays. But the Tengen cartridge was the original version, so most people know Gauntlet for having the Tengen cartridge. So I wanted to buy it with the Tengen cartridge because that's what it's famous for. I might at some point buy the other version as well, but I bought this version. I don't know if I'll actually play Gauntlet on NES because I'm not regularly hooking up my NES to play games on it, but maybe every now and then, So maybe at some point I'll try it. But really, it was just one of those ones that it was pretty cheap, and it's a famous NES game, and I want to bolster my NES collection a little bit, so I bought it. And the same goes for Super Mario Bros. 2. I actually totally forgot that I didn't have Super Mario Bros. 2. I had Mario Bros. 1, and I have two copies of Mario Bros. 3 for some reason. And I also have Super Mario Bros. Plus Duck Hunt, and I have Super Mario Bros. Plus Duck Hunt plus World Class Track Meet. So I have Super Mario Brothers a few different times, and I have Mario 3 a couple different times, but for some reason I didn't have Mario 2. I don't know why, but I didn't, and so now I do. Problem solved, right? And it's a really nice copy. Again, I'm buying all these loose, all these NES games. I'm not really in the business to be buying boxed NES games. I did buy one like a month ago. I bought what is it called? It's a golf game. Jack Nicklaus, I don't know, something like that. Jack Nicklaus Baseball I bought complete because it was like $8 or something complete. And I was like, $8 for a complete NES game? Sounds good. Count me in, right? So I bought it. But yes, generally I'm not in the business for buying complete NES games because they're very expensive. So, and also I don't mind the look of the carts, so I'm totally fine having loose NES carts. They look nice. And then the last game I bought at this store was Star Wars Battlefront 2, because again, it was only a few dollars. And I bought Star Wars Battlefront 1. This is on PS4 again. I bought Star Wars Battlefront 1 a while back because I found it for a single dollar. And I don't plan to play the online at all, but I plan to play the campaign because I've heard that the single player campaign for the Battlefront games is pretty good. And I think it's canon too. So I was like, alright, I'm a Star Wars fan, so I gotta play it. And so I'm going to do that. And I'm going to play the campaign for Battlefront 1 and for Battlefront 2 at some point. And I'll probably never touch the online because I'm just not interested in Battlefront Online. But I'm there for the campaign. So that's why I bought it. All right, so I think it's time we take a little bit of a music break. Usually we would have done this way earlier, but we're not doing that this time because I don't know, we're not. So we're gonna do a little music break, and then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna talk about a little bit of news for the end of the show. Talk about kind of the state of the industry for the next few months here, leading up to Summer Games Fest and the Switch 2, because we're already kind of getting to that point where we're leading up to that stuff. So that's exciting. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, and we're going to talk about a few games that got announced. One of them actually came out. I haven't played them, but we're going to talk about, people that did, and we're going to talk about some rumors and some leaks, and it's going to be super fun, so stay tuned. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we're in quarter two of the year, right? We're in quarter two of the year, and this is, of course, is when all of the big announcements, game reveals, game releases, and stuff pick up. I mean, the releases, I guess, pick up more, towards the end of the summer, or the beginning of the fall. I think is more kind of when they start to pick up. But still, we have a few that come out this time of year, and we have a lot of reveals and releases and leaks and speculation, all sorts of stuff that really culminates in the Summer Games Fest, which of course I think that starts on June 6th, the day after Switch. I said last time I think I said it was on the day of Switch 2. I think it's actually the day after Switch 2. Um, I think Switch 2 comes out on that Thursday maybe, and then Summer Games Fest is on the Friday, or maybe it's Wednesday and Thursday. I don't know. It's somewhere in that area. And so we'll have the Switch 2 come out the next day. Summer Games Festival start. We'll have the main show, and then there'll be a day or maybe two of indie stuff and smaller things. Last year there was a Devolver presentation, and then the last day will be the Xbox games showcase. I think, assuming it works like it did last year. I don't know if this information is out there or if it's just speculatory. That's my guess as to what's going to happen. I don't actually have info. Of course, who would assume that I would have info? But anyways, so assuming everything goes similarly to how it did last year, that's what'll happen because that's what happened last year. Last year I did not watch. I skimmed the indie thing. I watched parts of it. I didn't watch the Devolver thing last year. I skimmed the indie thing. I watched through the main show and I watched through the Xbox show, and then I didn't watch the Devolver at all. So there were the four shows. This year I'll probably watch it all. I'm gonna say tentatively I'm going to live stream the opening show and the Xbox game show, unless I have something come up that day or whatever. But tentatively, I'm going to say that I'm going to probably live stream my reaction to those two shows. So we'll see. I don't know. Who knows, right? Maybe something will come up, but that's my guess tentatively. So that's obviously going to be a crazy big week, or I guess the end of a week and the beginning of the next week. With Switch 2 coming out and then having all the Summer Games Fest announcements and stuff. And I guess speaking of Summer Games Fest, there's been rumors for a while here, last, I would say, month, maybe even a little more. And I talked about it last time as well. There are rumors that there's going to be a Persona 4 Golden remake that's going to be announced at either the main show of the Summer Games Fest or at the Xbox Showcase. Either one, people were saying it could be either or. Persona 3 Reload was showed last year at, not last year, 2 years ago at Summer Games Fest, and then it came out, in February last year. So people are saying that the same kind of thing is going to happen with Persona 4. Um, and that it's going to be at one of those two shows. And of course, I was very excited about that because I've just finished Persona 3 like a week ago or something. Um, yeah, a week ago. Actually, of today, as of today, recording this, it was a week ago. So I just came off of Persona 3 Reload. I'm totally down to play another Persona game. Obviously, not right off, but I mean, I assume this game's not going to come out at least for another 6 months. If it's getting announced at Summer Games Fest, assuming this actually happens. Of course, this isn't confirmed or anything, but I assume by the time it'll come out, I'll be good to play another Persona game, assuming it does happen. And actually, this news came out. I think it was just yesterday. It came out, or maybe it was today. Um, there was a website registered, and I don't know exactly how they got this information. I don't know if this was known to be registered by Sega or by Atlas, or if it was just registered just in general, and so we assumed it was Sega or Atlas. But either way, there was a website registered called p4re.jp. And before Persona 3 Reload got announced, there was a website called p3re. .jp. And so it's basically the exact same format, which makes obviously the assumption that Persona 4, maybe Persona 4 Reload is what they call it, which seems like a weird name. You'd think you'd want to give it a different name than Persona 3 for the remake, but who knows? I don't know. Maybe they'll do the same thing. Maybe they'll do something else. I don't know. I don't really care either way. But yes, it does seem like this is all but proof. Assuming this isn't made up, I don't know. Maybe I got bad information here, but assuming this isn't like made up stuff, it does seem like pretty good proof that this Persona 4, sorry, remake is actually happening, which I'm obviously very excited for because that means I can play all three of the modern games, and that'll be very exciting. So if that's true, then I will definitely be grabbing that probably on day one, or at least pretty early. I don't know if that'll be at the end of the year or if that'll be at the beginning of next year, but either way, I'll probably grab it real quick because that's very exciting. So that's where we're at. But yeah, Persona 4 Reload or whatever it's called may very well be happening. Of course, we will find out for sure in June. So that's just another thing that I'm looking forward to. There's a lot of stuff I'm looking forward to in June. We got Switch 2 coming out in what's it, 44 days, I think, as of when you're seeing this. So that's exciting. And now also we have the Summer Games Fest news and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot going on there in that week of June and a lot going on pretty soon. And I think if I've done my math right, there should only be 6 more shows until Switch 2 and until Summer Games Fest. So it'll be about 6 more shows, and then we'll be talking about all that stuff. So that's really not long at all. It feels like quite a ways off, but when I think about it in terms of amount of shows we have left, it's really not much, which is quite exciting. Quite exciting. So that was one of the big news that I was going to talk about was the Persona 4 website domain possibly being proof for the remake. Another thing I wanted to talk about, I said Summer Games Fest, June 5th. Okay, Doom the Dark Ages. So, of course, Doom games, right? You had Doom back in the 90s. I want to say it was 93, maybe. Maybe I sound like an idiot. No, not that one. That's the 2016 one. 1993. I was right. I'm not an idiot. Okay. 1993, Doom came out. So you had Doom, then you had Doom 2, and these were on like DOS, and they were on Super Nintendo and stuff, and they're on toasters and stuff too. Uh, that's like an internet trope. It's like, Doom could play on anything, and it'll be like people playing it on their toaster or on their refrigerator, or, on their Tesla. I mean, it's people program Doom to play on all these things. But anyways, so yes, Doom 1, and then there was Doom 2, and then there was Doom 64, and Doom 3. This is just the main series stuff, and then Doom 3. And then they remade Doom 3, or remastered it, I guess, in 2012, I think. But then Doom came back in 2016 with a game just called Doom. It was Doom 2016. That was on PS4 and Xbox One. I have that game. And then there was Doom Eternal just in 2019, 2019, 21, something like that. Um, I had most of my dates right up until this point. Oh, 2020. All right, fine. I was wrong on that one, but right idea. There was that Doom game. And then now Doom: The Dark Ages, which got announced at the Xbox Game Xbox what's this showcase, Xbox Game Showcase last year at Summer Games Fest. So what we were just talking about, but last year, Doom: The Dark Ages got announced, and that's like the last part. Well, I don't know if it's a trilogy or what. So far, it's a trilogy. Maybe they'll do more than three. I don't know. But right now, it's a trilogy. And that game is coming out on May 13th. So very soon, we'll have Doom: The Dark Ages. And I've wanted to play through the Doom series for a while now, and I was actually when I had Game Pass for a little while, I tried the first one out, and I didn't get very far. But I tried it out, and I thought it was nice. I was like, oh, it was a good game, right? And so since then, I've been kind of thinking in the back of my head, I'm like, okay, I didn't actually finish it. I tried it out for a little bit, and then I moved on because I wanted to play a lot of other stuff while I still had Game Pass. And so I've been thinking about it since then, and I've been like, all right, I've got to, at some point buy at least the Doom 1 and 2 collection, and then buy the newer Doom games. Well, I have Doom 2016 and I have Doom Eternal. I wish I had them on PS4, but I have them on Xbox. That's fine. I'll play them on Xbox. Whatever. No big deal. Um, but anyway, so I have the newer games. So I was like, at some point I have to play Doom 1 and 2, and then I can play the modern 3, right? Well, I was looking on Steam because unfortunately these Doom 1 and 2 games haven't been physically released and stuff, or if they have, they've been in limited quantities. So unfortunately, I'm probably going to have to buy these games digitally unless I actually play the original versions, which I think Doom 2 never came to a console. I want to say Doom 2 was only on computers, but I could be wrong. I know Doom 1 obviously was on Super Nintendo, but I'd rather not play it there because that doesn't seem like that'd be the best place to play it. So I'm like, okay, fine, I'll have to buy these games digitally. And then I was looking on Steam, and I realized that there's another collection. There's actually two different packs besides just Doom 1 and 2 for Doom. There's one that includes all the classic games, they call them. So it includes Doom 64 and Doom 3. And I guess it's the remastered version of Doom 60 or Doom 3 as well. And there's another collection that includes all that stuff, but it also includes the modern. At least I think it's Doom Eternal. I don't know if Doom: The Dark Ages is in there. Maybe it is. If so, it's like a pre-order code or something. But either way, you get like all the games. And the one for all the games is like $100. And I have two of those games anyway. I see no reason to do that, especially when a couple of those I can get physically and play. But the other collection that just has the classic games is only like $18 right now. It's on sale. I was like, all right, $18, maybe I could do that. So I'm thinking I'm probably going to buy that Doom collection. And then at some point, I'm just going to buy Doom 1 physically, like a loose cart on Super Nintendo. And at some point, I'll buy Doom 64 as a cart as well. I don't know about the other games, we'll see. But I at least want to have those two as collection pieces, and then I'll play them on PC at some point. So I'm thinking I'm going to buy that collection probably tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll probably buy it. I have enough money, so probably buy that Doom collection, and maybe next show I'll be talking about having played some of Doom 1, possibly. We'll see. Because, yeah, I wanted to get into Doom, and I was like, well, there's a new Doom game coming out. Now is the perfect time. Maybe it's not the perfect time, but now is a good time to play it. I don't think I'm going to, like, pick up that Doom: The Dark Ages on day one, but I imagine I'll probably grab it this year unless I get held up on one of the other games or something. I'll probably pick it up this year, probably late in the year. We'll see, but not planning to play it on launch unless, of course, I manage to blast through all the games in a few weeks. Maybe they're just that good. I don't know. Maybe. I'm not planning to play it on day one, but I imagine I'll play it at some point fairly soon. So that was another thing I wanted to talk about. Doom: The Dark Ages. That's like really coming up. I think it's only going to be 3 shows maybe, and that game will be out, something like that. Because it's what is it, April 30th, and then it'd be May like 7th, and yeah, so like 3 shows, something like that. Yeah, super super close. The other big news, I don't think we knew about this at all last time. I think there was maybe some rumors about it, and then it got confirmed. Bethesda tweeted, they tweeted just on a black background the Roman numeral 4, the IV. And of course, everybody figured it out immediately. Like, oh my gosh, it's Oblivion, right? Oblivion remake. And so they came out and confirmed it, and then they said there was a presentation. And so that presentation happened today, as of recording this. So for you guys, it happened yesterday. Happened at like 11 Eastern. I think it was like 8 Pacific, so 11 Eastern. And I did not watch it live. I was in school. And I honestly, I'm not even disappointed that I missed it. I wasn't probably gonna watch it live, even if I didn't have school. But it was I mean, it was it was a presentation. I skimmed through it. I'm not gonna go watch the whole replay because it's really just for an Oblivion remake. And personally, I'm not too terribly interested in an Oblivion remake. Maybe one day, like 5, 10 years from now, 20 maybe, I'll find the Oblivion remake and I'll find it like in a $5 bin, and I'll be like, all right, sounds good. Let's play the Oblivion remake. But as it currently stands, unless I get super into Elder Scrolls suddenly, which I'm currently not, I can't imagine I'm going to be playing the Oblivion remake at any point. What I found weird about the Oblivion remake, so that the presentation was like over an hour, and I don't think there was really anything too substantial. Like it's not even a remake. I think it's just a remaster, or maybe it's a remake. I don't know, but it doesn't seem like they've added too much. They just kind of prettied it up. Maybe they've added a few things here and there. Maybe there's people out there that are Oblivion fans and they're like freaking out at me because they added all sorts of stuff and I missed it. And I'm like, I don't know. But it didn't seem like it was anything too revolutionary. I actually kind of expected they were going to do this presentation, and then at the very end, they were going to be like, and we're working on Elder Scrolls 6, right? They didn't have to give us any information, any name, any date, anything. All they had to do was put it on a black screen and be like, Elder Scrolls 6. And like that's all we needed, right? Maybe they could have even put a year on it, right? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe they were like 2029, right? And that would have been fine, right? But anything I think to tease something Elder Scrolls 6 probably would have made sense. But no, they nothing like that. You know, Skyrim came out in 2011 and that's still the newest one. And it is, if you're a big Elder Scrolls fan, I know someone in real life who's a big Elder Scrolls fan. If you're a big Elder Scrolls fan, it's kind of messed up. You waited, what, 14 years, almost, not quite, 14 years, and now, what, you get a remake? It's like, okay, cool, can we get a game? Like, let's get a new game, right? It's one of those things. I saw a post, this was months ago now, but I always think back to it. And of course, it's kind of old news now, but it was like, what game will come out first? And it was The Sims 5, Mario Kart 9, which of course now we know that's not what it's called, um, Elder Scrolls 6, or GTA 6. And this post, I think, was posted before we knew about GTA 6, or maybe we knew about it, but people were still expecting it was going to get delayed. Um, it was before we knew about Mario Kart 9. There were some rumors. It was before, I think, Project Renee with Sims had been, um, you know, discovered, but there was no indication that that was anywhere near completion, just like now. I think it's been basically soft canceled. Um, and then for GTA, again, I don't know if we had heard about it or if we had heard about it and not known much, but either way, it was, not, there wasn't much information on that. And so the idea was like, which one's going to come out first? Because all of those games came out within a few years. I guess Skyrim was 2011. I want to say Sims 4 was 2014. Mario Kart, I want to say was 2014, 14, I think so. And then GTA 6, or GTA 5, I don't know when GTA 5 was, maybe 2011 as well. I'm just going to double check that so I don't sound like a complete idiot. 2013, okay, I was totally off on that. 2013, all right. So yeah, so basically, two of the, one of those, so we have 2011, 2013, and then two 2014. So they all came out relatively close to each other. And the idea was that none of them had had a game in like 10 years. And now it's been even more. In Elder Scrolls' case, it's been almost 15 now. And so the idea was like, which game's going to come out first? Oblivion Remake obviously does not count. GTA 6 will count. I would say Mario Kart World will count as, the Mario Kart 9. So looks like Sims 5 is probably Sims 5 or Elder Scrolls 6. We're going to be rounding out the rear. And then looks like Mario Kart World's going to be the first of those games to come out. So, fast forward, a couple years after that post, and we found out that Mario Kart was going to come first. But it's just an interesting thing that I remember seeing all those years ago. I say all those years ago. It's probably like 2 years ago or something, but it wasn't. It wasn't recently. By any means. There was another thing. It was Star Wars Celebrations. Star Wars Celebration. It's a thing they do every year. They announce new Star Wars projects, movies, shows, video games occasionally, right? You have some stuff. And I am quite the Star Wars fan. I don't really intend to talk about Star Wars on here like much at all, besides video games. Like I don't really. Maybe if I'm talking about a Star Wars video game, maybe I'll bring up the movies or the shows a little bit. I don't know. But I am a Star Wars fan. And so I didn't like watch Star Wars Celebration, but I heard about it and stuff online. There's a new Star Wars game, Star Wars Zero Company. Now I just said I wasn't going to talk about Star Wars, but I will talk about Star Wars real fast. I'm a huge Clone Wars fan. Clone Wars, absolutely amazing. I love the prequels. I love Clone Wars. Those are my favorites personally. Um, and this game is set in the Clone Wars era. Which, as soon as I heard that, I'm like, oh my god, sign me up. Where can I buy it, right? Now, I expected that this game. So, my dad told me about this one, and I was like, huh, I was like, okay, is it another Ubisoft or is it an EA one? And he was like, oh, it's EA. I was like, okay. And I was like, well, wait, who would be making, a Star Wars game? Because I assumed Respawn was working on another Fallen Order or Jedi Survivor. I don't know if they're doing another one of those. Has that been confirmed? I have no idea. I played a little bit of Fallen Order and didn't like it very much. I'm probably going to go back to it at some point, but I'm not looking to anytime soon. So I'm not too invested in what's going on with that series. But anyway, so I thought Respawn was working on one of those. I knew that like DICE and that they were doing the Battlefront stuff. And then the only other one I could think of was BioWare. I was like, is BioWare making another Star Wars game? But they just put out Dragon Age and they haven't made a Star Wars game in forever. Like, who could be making this game? And when I said BioWare, he's like, oh yeah, it's BioWare. It wasn't BioWare. He saw like Bio something else. It was like some a support studio that was in the trailer, but it's not a BioWare game. It's a Respawn game. But yes, they're making this Clone Wars era Respawn game. Which the Respawn games, from all I've heard, have been good. I don't personally like Fallen Order, but I can respect that Respawn is a good studio. They make good stuff. I just personally didn't enjoy the Metroidvania-ness of Fallen Order. And now that I've played some Metroid games, maybe I would now. So maybe I should go back to it at some point. But I don't know. We'll see. But I'm not looking to at the moment. But I guess my point is I'm very excited about this Star Wars game, and it's set during the Clone Wars era, and it's a tactics RPG, which I'm not like necessarily a fan of tactics RPGs, but I played like Mario and Rabbids, and I loved those games. I haven't really played other tactics RPGs. I want to play Fire Emblem. I want to play Advance Wars. I want to try those games out. So, I'm looking to try some tactics RPGs, maybe here and there, right? So I'm definitely gonna be picking up this game at some point. I don't know, maybe if it's gonna be right when it comes out or if I'm gonna wait a little while, but I was very excited about this Star Wars Zero Company. Um, and yeah, I thought it was going to be an interesting thing. So I don't know. I don't think we have much information on Star Wars Zero Company. I'm assuming that this is probably going to show up again at the Summer Games Fest, whether it's in the opening show or maybe in the Xbox show. I think it was only confirmed for Xbox and PlayStation and PC, obviously. I don't think it was confirmed for Switch 2. It may not come to Switch 2, or maybe it will be announced for Switch 2 at Summer Games Fest. We'll see. But I'm assuming we're probably going to hear about this again at Summer Games Fest, so I'll make sure to keep an eye out because I'm interested in that. And with that, I am running a little bit short on time here, so I'm going to wrap this episode up. Thank you all for tuning in. This is the 10th episode. I'm super excited to get into the double digits here. We're in the double digits now. That's going to be fun. And we're coming up on Switch 2. We're coming up on Summer Games Fest. Things are getting pretty busy again. And so I'm still playing lots of games, and I will be back next week to talk about more of those. Maybe I'll beat some stuff, maybe I won't, we'll see. But I'll at least have stuff to talk about, I'm sure, because I'm quite the yapper. If you want to talk, or if you want me to, have a specific conversation, you can email the show with any questions, any comments, any suggestions. You can email at notjustnintendo@gmail.com. That is notjustnintendo@gmail.com. All one word, no spaces, no nothing. We're bare bones here. I'm going to stop plugging the Blue Sky. I'm probably not going to use that. You can join the Discord, though. It's for the YouTube and for the podcast. And if you're not coming from YouTube, if you're coming from Spotify, you can go check out the YouTube. That is the space Ginger Ninja. I think it's probably in the description of the podcast. And also, I said you can email, but I forgot to mention, if you're on YouTube, you can just comment in. You don't have to email because, I can read the comments right there. Same goes for Spotify. If you're on Spotify, I can read the comments there. You don't have to email either. So just leave a comment, or you can email the show if you so choose, if you so desire, right? Or if you're watching elsewhere. I don't even know if the show is elsewhere. I don't know. I wasn't even bothered putting it in other places really too much. So I probably will at some point, but I haven't currently, so we'll see. I don't know. Whatever, doesn't matter. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and like I said, click all those links, join the Discord, email the show, all that fun stuff. We still haven't got an email, and I want to get an email.
because that would be fun to answer on the show. But with all that said, thanks again for watching, and I will see you all next week. Roll the music.